Welcome to List Off. My name's Ozzy.
And I'm Nat, and this week we'll be counting down our top 5 cakes, as suggested by Graham Murphy. And just a reminder, if you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments or messages on any of the social media platforms, is the correct term, actually. I went for a reach and I found the exact right one. And let us know if you'd like to hear us do a top 5 of anything. But as I say, this week it's top 5 cakes. How did you find your top 5 cakes list, Ozzy?
Tasty. I don't know exactly. Like, we didn't super define cake. Did you fall back on your old favourite, the Wikipedia list of cakes?
Yeah, I went on Wikipedia list of cakes. I was also like there were some things where I included some things where I was like, yeah, if not here, then where? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there were some question marks, and I was like, you know what? If not here, then where's it going to go? Like,
yeah,
if it's not a cake, what are we at? Where are we at?
We've done breads. You can imagine there's some things that would fall into the pastry category.
Yeah. I think I've avoided anything I would say is definitely a pastry. But I think there's some where, we can argue the point. Are you a cake fan?
Yeah, I'm a cake fan. I mean, I think I'm a narrow cake fan. You'll see that large swathes of cakedom don't trouble my list. Like, I like cake, but I don't like all the cakes, I
think I'm similar. It was interesting. I thought this would be like I would say my honourable mentions is teeny. In fact, it might be like 1, outside of the 5. Whereas I think my 5 are quite broad, and I was almost thinking, could I be more specific?
Gotcha.
But I'd say they become more specific as they go on, but they start pretty broad and say, that type of cake I like. And as it goes on, I kind of get a bit narrower as I'm defining my top cakes.
For you. I had my list pretty much, and then I went on the Wikipedia list of cakes and was like, well, if that's the cake, that's going number 1. So I had to shuffle everything up 1. So yeah, that's the way my list making went.
I should start off and say my number 5 is a chocolate muffin. And it's a difficult one because you could kind of go, I mean, all chocolate cake? Like it's that kind of, but I think with the muffin, it's what chocolate cake is also chocolate flavor in the same way that banana flavor is not bananas, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean? It's got that sort of chocolate cake has a sort of, it's that chocolatey, like almost like chocolate cake is a different flavor to me than just chocolate. But It's a good taste.
It's cocoa, yeah? So it's made of cocoa powder, right? That's the...
Yeah.
Which is another thing you're making out of the same thing you make chocolate out of.
And I think it's something, though, that does alter the sponge to being something other than what would be a regular vanilla sponge. You are creating something. And I think perhaps the best use of that is probably in a chocolate muffin, where it's a kind of lighter version of that sponge than you would get in perhaps a thicker chocolate cake. I wouldn't, I wouldn't bat away a big piece of chocolate cake, and I also like chocolate icing, except I think the king of the chocolate cake is when it gets to a chocolate muffin, and what you're dealing with is quite a light sponge rather than a heavy cake.
This is interesting because I'm not sure that's my ideal chocolate muffin. Just to clarify here, right? Are you talking a chocolate muffin or a double chocolate muffin?
Do you mean with like chocolate chips in them?
Yeah, but you're talking about a chocolate flavor, because a chocolate muffin is like a vanilla-y one with chocolate chips.
Oh, with chocolate. No.
You're talking double chocolate.
Double
chocolate muffin, but not a triple where they put white chocolate on and spoil it.
Oh no, and that would spoil it, which is ironic because I love a white chocolate. I love bits, but in that it is like not here. It's not the place.
Also, white chocolate chips are generally of a very low quality compared
They
to other white chocolate,
are.
right?
They are.
But the
As
greatness
are
of
Oh no, go on. I was going to say, as are the disappointing Weetabix melts. They're. I mean, it felt like a dream come true when they introduced white chocolate Weetabix chocolate melts. But when you get them, the white chocolate, and I should have seen it coming, is a poor quality white chocolate, and
yeah.
it's a bit. Nah,
Let's
come
face
on.
it, like even we're both fans of white chocolate to greater and lesser extents, but the bad white chocolate does taste of stomach acid, and nobody wants that.
Yeah.
The for me though, the and I haven't made my top five a double chocolate muffin, but they're in my honorables. The beauty of them is the context, right? You're not having them at a party. You're not having them on your birthday. You're having them like for breakfast. You know, like I'm just gonna going in the coffee shop. Oh yeah, I have a big chocolate cake with lumps of chocolate in it. That's amazing. That's like, what'd you do this morning? Had a cake. You don't have to say that, but that's what happened. It's
It's
like
true.
it's like an acceptable thing to be eating at 9 a.m. in
It's
public.
true. They are a breakfast food, but I think they're also they're sort of an anytime cake.
Oh, totes, yeah.
Yeah, I
See,
wouldn't
but I
like
don't
to.
want I don't want it that light. I want mine like I don't mind. I like the ones with the like chocolate mush in the middle. I like ones with a lot of chocolate chips in, not just on the top. I want to get bits of
Mhm,
chocolate chip throughout the whole cake,
mhm,
and I'd be quite up for it being quite sticky and rich.
mm.
So
Um,
I don't want it too dry.
no, I don't really like. I mean, I'd say muffin is the one, but I suppose maybe this is the quality of the muffin I'm talking about. But a chocolate muffin is one where I would be quite happy without icing. Don't need it.
Yeah,
I don't mind it. If that's an extra, I'd probably have icing, but don't need it.
no, the chips is where it's at.
Yeah, and I think it's a strong contender there because it stands on its own. Whereas I think actually it's interesting. I'll bring that up as I get to it. But yeah, I think the best cakes in some ways are ones that are so good that they're not going to be made better with icing.
That's good. Yeah, you mean it's really the cake, whereas
Hmm.
like you'll see a lot of kids eat cake and just eat the icing.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got one kid who just eats the icing, and one kid who just eats the cake and leaves the icing, but they won't share. Right, muffin to sniff at. My number five is the angel cake.
Oh yeah.
The angel cake, it's a bit like a Battenberg, but without the jam or marzipan or being named after European nobility. And you don't want any of those things in a cake, in my opinion. Like I don't want any of those things in. I don't want marzipan anywhere except in a shop window.
No.
In a shop window, like shaped into an animal or something. Great.
Yeah.
Jam, in certain circumstances, but I'm not really a jam. Jam's not my jam. And yeah, the Battenbergs, um, now known as the Mountbattens, not a fan. So, Battenberg out. Angel cake, great. I think it's like the lowest quality, most frowned upon children's cake you
Yeah.
can get in supermarkets. 3 colors of sponge, pink, yellow, white, smushy, icingy, buttery
Icing
stuff in
cement.
between. Yeah, and then possibly a layer of icing on the top, white icing on the top. I think it's a lovely cake. I think
Yeah.
the icing is super nice. It's colorful and fun. It reminds me of like special occasion after school. Got a little one of those mini angel cakes,
Mm.
individual slices from old Mr. Kipling.
I think I went through an angel cake phase in my teens where I was into it a lot.
In your teens,
Yeah, my
it's
teens,
a
I'd
classic
say, where I
teenage
was
boy
eating a
to be
lot
into
of
angel cakes.
Of course, it's the natural way. Um, and but I would say that it probably was a phase, and
Right.
I think I kind of grew out of it. And I don't know, like do you know what? I feel like when I see an angel cake, I get that from it. I
Mm-hmm.
can totally go. It's almost like I don't need to have it again to get the angel cake message. I go, I can totally imagine myself eating an angel cake,
Yeah.
but I don't feel the need to do it again. That is interesting as well. We were talking about the cake accompaniments. You're not a jam person on a cake.
No,
Not really.
no.
A marzipan's another one. Yeah, bad. I'm not into it. It is one of those things that you kind of hear people like. It's meant to be another one like Marmite, isn't it? But I think most people don't like marzipan.
I think most people don't like marzipan. I think people will eat marzipan in a Christmas cake or something, or in certain contexts. But you meet people who really like marzipan, but they're like 100 years old, and they're talking about a time where that was the best thing you could get.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
But they hadn't invented anything else.
I think marzipan's more like a plasticine or Play-Doh.
It's a lot like a plastic explosive, isn't it? Isn't it like chemically quite similar to plastic explosive?
It feels like it could be.
Yeah.
But instead, they've just gone. It feels like marzipan to me feels like one of them things that when you try it, you go, I don't think this is made to be eaten. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's like a thing that feels a bit like, I think we've made an error here. Or just because technically we can eat it, it doesn't mean like it's something to be eaten.
Yeah.
I think it's got like a kind of slightly eerie taste to it for me. I'm not a fan of it at all.
I understand that. It says here, right? Just wanted to tell you this angel cake fact. The largest recorded angel cake was 1 metre in length and 50 centimetres in width, which was baked in the English town of Bakewell. Like points on the location, but that's not that big. To me, like the biggest cake, that to me suggests that it hasn't been a massively competitive field, the largest angel cake. Like
exactly.
I could make one. I couldn't make one that big in one piece in my oven, but I could piece that together from like 5. But it'd be an even number, wouldn't it? 6.
Yeah.
I'm not that impressed. So
I think, but the Guinness Book of Records is full of that, where you read things and go, I mean, that might be the world record, but that's because no one's ever
bothered to
challenged it or like bothered to try and go. Like it feels like, yeah, I mean, I could do that, and I still don't do it.
The angel cake should not be confused with the American angel food cake, which is a very boring cake in comparison from what I can see. So if any Americans listening and going, angel cake, it's not that. It's not that one. Ours is a very colourful food colouring based cake for children.
Yeah.
Probably most of all, it's quite a little girl's cake, because it's in the colours of your little girl's marketed stuff.
And, maybe wouldn't have bothered me as a teenager. I would
teenage boy, you were walking down the street eating one like that.
Yeah.
Everyone else was with their cans of nourishment with a spoon, and you had an angel cake. And you were eating the whole slab.
That's right. What of it?
Yes.
No, I'd have a slice, very much a slice of angel cake, and I'd try and do it in the sort of width of the length of one of its parts.
I think that's
so. You'd have that's the portion size for me.
Yeah, that's
of an angel cake.
It's a little guide.
That's a guide as to how much you should be.
A square section of each colour across the thing will give you the right amount.
Portion size is probably a good thing to say as we get onto it, and exactly how much is the right amount of single bit of cake.
Quite a lot. If it's good. If there are top 5 cakes, I want loads. I mean, angel cake, I don't need that much, but looking down my list, I'll have loads.
Yeah. I find that when you go to like that sort of birthday party era cakes, what you'd end up with would sort of be a kind of an inch thick sliver of a bit of cake, right? Which isn't really, that it's like handed to you on a napkin, and you're kind of having that like, it's not under, you couldn't stand up under its own volition.
And it takes two mums with 3 knives to get it onto your plate without falling apart. Yeah, no, there's that. But what's sad now is people are very practical, and instead of cutting it into slices, they'll cut it into like, sort of squares. Like, they'll have a tray bake cake, and they'll cut it into like 40 squares or something. And it's very practical, but it's not a cake. It's not a slice of cake, is it?
Yeah, it's less fun. Yeah. It's less fun.
Like being at a canteen.
I find portion size interesting because, like, with things like when you get into like fun size Mars bars, they always bother me in my head. I go, wait, how many of these can I legitimately eat, and it equals a regular size Mars bar?
Yeah,
that's always a challenge for me. Post Halloween, when I stock up on some fun size chocolates to give to kids, and then turn all my lights off in the hope that no kids ring my bell, so that on the 1st of November I go, oh man, I've left with all this fun-sized chocolate. What am I going to do?
Oh man, I'm going to eat them in what I imagine is one Mars bar worth of Mars bars.
Yeah, I'm not a monster. I'm not a monster, even though post-Halloween, and to some extent, my actions are perhaps monstrous to some. But
we're going trick or treating this year for the first time. I mean, we would have gone last year, but COVID, it wasn't.
And we got some. I got some last year. Couldn't believe my eyes. Couldn't believe my eyes. I thought of all the years when I was going to get my
did they have
fun-sized Maltesers.
Did they have a bucket on a long stick that they reached towards you?
They should have done.
Please,
they should have done.
Give us some sweets. Or we'll mess up your house.
They were right. They were all just regular kids with. I mean, I guess technically they were wearing masks, but they weren't the permitted ones, I guess. But it was a surprise and a disappointment when I handed over some fun-sized treats to them.
Like, we're gonna go trick or treating. Definite. I haven't decided what I'm going to dress up as yet, but it's gonna be good.
My number 4 is where I kind of go back on what I just said, and it's basically cupcakes. But for me, a cupcake has to be frosted, iced cupcake. Ideally with something like maybe a single or perhaps up to 3 Maltesers on top. You know what I mean? The ones where you're adding a little bit of something onto it. I'm thinking, but a plain sort of vanilla sponge. I like that it's got the portion size worked out, even though technically 2 is fine, I think, with a cupcake. It has to be iced, and probably I would favour a vanilla icing, and even things when they have that chocolate icing, strawberry icing on. It very rarely to me tastes of strawberry. It's got that sort of very buttery. Actually, that's what I mean. It's the sort of buttery icing, isn't it? That's what I like. Yep. Very buttery icing, maybe with something else on top. As I said, maybe up to 3 Maltesers.
Buttercream icing.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean Maltesers. I mean Smarties.
Okay,
what am I on about?
Dude.
Sorry.
You sound like
I'm not a Malteser. I'm not a maniac.
I thought that was a bit chocolatey for a standard.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And a cupcake.
I mean, Smarties are quite chocolatey, but up to 3, I think Smarties. Smarties.
Are we talking a kind of Village Fate cupcake, or are we talking like a kind of modern day, like Fancy Dan cupcake shop where they've like got a towered high like plume of icing on the top?
Do you know what? All that stuff, I would say, I'm not that fussed about. I wouldn't turn it down, but I would say one of the nice things about a cupcake is that one that perhaps a 5 or 6 year old might make is just as good to me as a fancy one that would cost about £6.50 in the centre of town.
Yeah,
like I think it's one of those things where cupcakes are one of those things where they nail it, and when little kids make them, they're just as good. It's like absolutely great because all it is, it's basically eggs, flour, sugar. When they're free pouring some sugar into all that stuff. I mean, if anything, in some ways, which kind of blows this away, is that one of the things that's perhaps better than cake is cake mix, which is like one of those, like, I mean, you don't even need to cook it.
Just licking the spoon.
Oh, yeah. I think that stuff. I think in a way they're the sort of best cupcakes. And I think it's perhaps the only food I can think of which is just as good if prepared by a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I mean,
can't think of anything else.
I have a 6-year-old and I definitely can't think of anything that I would like to eat that she prepared. That's good.
But if she to make some cakes, probably come out all right.
I think we should shout out the close relatives of the cupcake, the butterfly cake, with the like sort of wings made of the side of the cake tipped up with some cream underneath. That's nice. And a fairy cake. I'm not sure. I think a fairy cake is ill-defined. I think it's basically a cupcake. But
yes.
Maybe got some sparkles on it or something.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the 100 and 1,000, that kind of thing.
Not bothered.
I don't need a crunchy element to my cake. Thanks very much.
There's just like, to me, it's like fancy dust. I've got nothing to
But
it.
I'd rather if it had the consistency of dust, you see, whereas like it actually is like, oh, this is nice and spongy, and then there's a nice soft bit on the top, and then there's like a not into that.
I'll tell you something else that's added to icing for a while, and it wasn't something I favoured. Do you remember those little tiny silver balls?
Yeah, silver balls.
That had a sort of like cola-y flavour to them.
And they can break your teeth.
Like them.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
Silver balls.
That was something that was added to them.
It was just something that some cake guy invented, right? And was like, oh, we've made like $1 billion. We need to sell this for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can still get them, but that's a bad idea.
Up to 3 Smarties. I think that's about as good as you're going to get with it.
Up to 3. Disappointing. My number 4 is a very specific one. It's the Cadbury Swiss Gatto. Right? Now, I'm not sure this is still made in exactly this form or if it's changed. I think it's definitely changed at least once in my life, and it may not be around anymore, but it's a vanilla cake that is made in a long strip and then buttered on one side with a chocolate kind of buttercream, and then rolled up into a cake shape, right? So that when you cut through it, the layers are vertical, not horizontal, right? It's a spiral, and you cut through it. I was going to say,
spiral.
It's a spiral. Yeah. So when you cut a slice out, it's got layers vertically running through it. It used to have a kind of marble, and then it's coated in Cadbury's chocolate, and it used to have like dairy milk top and sides, and then a kind of darker chocolate, like a Bournville dribbly pattern on it. And sometime in the 90s, they replaced that with, on the top, it had, what do you call them? Little chocolate swirls, little chocolate flakes. You know what I mean?
Like a sort of flake bits.
Oh, flake bits. They're like chocolate curls. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I do know. Yeah.
That's the right word. But Cadbury Swiss Gatto is what my grandparents, my dad's parents, used to have in their old people's home in Northampton when you used to go and visit them. And they get that, like, especially for us. And their cooking was, and my dad won't mind me saying this, bad, right? Bad cooking, like bad, boiled everything, overcooked everything, bad. But their puddings were just winner, right? Like they before, when they were a bit younger, when they were in their own house, they would do like what they called a jelly island, right? So jelly, cream, and a meringue in the middle. Beautiful, right? And then later on, when that was, I don't know, became too demanding a thing to do or whatever, right? Then they would have the Cadbury Swiss Gatto. And there was never a time when I wasn't like really pleased and excited to see this same thing there, And yeah, it just made me really love it. And sometimes it would be quite old, like you could tell they bought it in preparation like a long time before, so it would be a bit dry, but it's still good. And yeah, the way you eat it is you have your slice, and then you just eat. You break off each layer with your fork, and eat that. Brilliant. So it's a top commercial cake. It's pretty lame in many ways, but because of the way you eat it in the vertical layers, it's great. I could eat one now.
I like the sound. I think it sounded great to me. The description I was all about. I was less into it when the idea where it goes a bit dark chocolate Bournville. That's where I was checked out a bit.
There's very little of that. I just mean it was a two-tone sort of marbly, splodgy pattern on it, really. And it was sort of smooth top. Do you know what I mean? Just so sort of basically chocolate iced, with a slightly softened chocolate. So it's had something mixed into it, butter or oil or something, right? But then they replaced that with a more, what did I say? Chocolate curls to make it a little more, I don't know, gâteau-y.
Okay.
But the inside, the spiral thing, that's the magic.
It does. I think it sounds pretty great. I do think I'm a fan. I don't know it. And I sort of visualized something else that wasn't it. But I'm all about it. Sounds good. My number 3 is New York style cheesecake, which is one where someone would go, "Is that a cake?" And it's like, what? Where are we going to do? Are we ever going to do top 5 flans? If it's a flan,
I'm
it
not.
has a sort of digestive-y, biscuity base. It's got cake in the title. It's going in cakes.
Yeah, I support that.
Cheesecake was one of those things that was like I remember, hearing rumor of cheesecake and being like, no, when I was a kid, sounded
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, kids would
That's
never.
absolutely
You
disgusting.
offer a kid a cheesecake, they're going to say no until they've had
Yeah,
some.
yeah. But then it was one of those things I remember being like the quickest turnaround of opinion. Having it and going, this is actually one of the best cakes I've ever had in my life. I would say my top 3 as we're going into them. These are all my fully 3 regular cakes.
Okay.
The cheesecake, I would say, is the one which, as an adult, is the most socially acceptable.
Right. Just by having cheese in the name, it makes it more sophisticated and grown up.
Totally.
Like you say, what are you having? I'm just going to have some cake. Be like, what are you having?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a cheesecake.
Yeah. That's totally fine. A cheesecake is totally acceptable. And so it should be. There's nothing wrong with cheesecake. It's an absolutely delicious flan-based thing. So I guess it's like a sort of cream cheese plus cream, right? To make that sort of flan flavor on a biscuity base.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's endlessly never loses its number. It's always going to be high in the chart for me, and very much that New York style one is what I mean. I've had some of the sort of baked cheesecake, which I do like as well, and is sort of similar tasting. But I think it is that sort of, just the base is biscuit, everything else is cheesecake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of when you put raspberries on top. I know some people feel that is part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and a bear cheesecake is something that they're not really as into.
Whereas you'd eat bear cheesecake.
I would eat bear cheesecake.
Yeah.
I'm also not a big fan when it has a lemon or lime little top on it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
You
I know
ever
what you
seen
mean.
that?
You get that kind of like gelatine-y kind of top. Yeah.
Yeah, don't like that. I like it pure cheesecake. All I want, cheesecake and base. Cheesecake and base. That's it. That's it.
Pure cheesecake and base.
It's my perfect cheesecake.
Cheesecake fundamentalist. My number 3 is a lemon cake. Not a lemon drizzle cake, although there's not that much difference. But basically, I'd rather have a nice layer of lemon icing. Literally, icing sugar, what's it called? Scrunch a lemon. What do we call that? No, not zest it. No, get juice.
The
juice
juice.
a lemon. Juice a lemon. Yeah, not scrunch. Juice a lemon. Pour that into the icing sugar, or add icing sugar until you get the right consistency. Put that on. Let it set. Yes. So a lemon cake, preferably for me, not with bits in it. I'm not a big bits in it fan of dust. I know. There's no fruit cake in my list at all, except for this lemon cake. Right? Lemon cake I like. Lemon icing I like a lot. It's quite a refreshing cake. Good in the summer. On occasions where I'm not having anything chocolatey, lemon cake is great. And I'll take a drizzle. I think drizzle can be really good, but it's more temperamental because getting the kind of crispy top with the drizzle cake is difficult. I've made a few of them and very hit and miss.
I was tempted to include a lemon cake because I'm often surprised by how much I enjoy them, even though they're really on my go-to list. And you almost get 2 kinds, don't you? You get one which is a very sweet lemon, and one in a cake sometimes where you're getting the tartness.
Yeah, I want to get the tartness, I think.
Yeah, I think I quite like both in a way. I'm often surprised. I don't often go for it, but I'm often surprised by how much I like a lemon cake.
Well, the lemon icing, to me, that's a pretty magical, flavor because you've got, it's just sugar, but plus the pure lemon juice, it's got like a real zing in your mouth, real fizz, It's like eating some sour Haribo. So, lemon cake, I'm there. I'm there for it. I'm down with the lemon cake. Have some now. I quite like some now. We should have got cakes in for this. Do you know what I mean? We
Yeah,
could
I
have just
mean, it's
been.
always going to be a problem if we're on the food ones when we start talking about them.
I think it's probably the moment to say that I'm a
Mhm.
massive fan of the Gatto fork,
Oh,
the
right, yeah.
smaller three-pronged fork that you get in a set of cutlery. And you go, well, I'll
Yeah.
do these. Eat cake with it. Eat everything with it. They're great. But eating cake with it, like some people are like, I'll just use my hands. I'm like, no, I want a Gatto fork. If I like cake, but a cake with a Gatto fork is like 10 times better because it
Yeah.
makes you eat little small bits and make it last longer.
I don't own a gatto fork.
Do you know what?
Uh,
I own one, and I had a set of like 10 about a year ago. So something is happening to my Gatto forks.
Someone's stealing them.
I think the kids are taking them and like playing with them or something because they're like, because they're kid sized, they're small. I think they've nicked them all.
But as you said that, I was thinking, yeah, I could probably have a gatto fork.
Do you know what? I'm going to get some more. Maybe I'll get you some when I get some. I'm going to get like a packet of Gatto, like a load of them because I love them. And if you have a party, you want to have loads, right? Like it's like, hi, I want to hand out cake to everyone with Gatto forks. You need like a lot of cake, a lot of Gatto forks. When I only
Yeah.
had like maybe 10 or 8, and now one sad Gatto fork.
I would say, though, I do perhaps in a try and mix and make do. I will often eat a cake with a regular fork.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there's no Gatto fork, I'm going fork. I'd still take that over hands or a spoon, which is the wrong thing, you
Mm.
know. But yeah, fork can't beat it. Gatto fork, love them.
My number 2 is a Madeira cake. And it's in there based on, I would say a Madeira cake is the kind of thing that I would associate with old people. Is that fair?
Yeah.
But I would also say that perhaps this, and to some extent, my number 1 are kind of old people cakes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing, like when I was growing up on a Sunday, we'd tend to have a Sunday roast at lunchtime. And in the evening, we'd have like a sort of tea, a sort of tea and cakes would be our sort of. We'd almost have the Sunday lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and then instead of having any kind of evening meal,
Mm.
we'd have something like tea and cake, almost like we had the pudding then.
Sounds
Maybe
great.
some like scones or
Mm-hmm. Hot cross buns? Would you have hot cross buns if it was Easter?
yeah, probably. Although I never liked them.
Okay.
Occasionally, if there was a savoury, it would be in the form of a crumpet, drop scones,
Mm-hmm.
little bits of cake. And one of the regulars there was always the Madeira cake. And Madeira cake is named that, not because it's from Madeira, it's very much English, Irish origin. And it was originally eaten with Madeira wine. So people have it with wine.
Sweet wine, yeah.
But now it's kind of acknowledged that the best thing to go with it is tea. And what it is as someone who's a fan of tea, a Madeira cake basically releases a nectar if eaten with tea. So the tea kind of mixes with the cake, and you can have a bit of a dip even. And when you go back to it, it's basically released this sort of this sort of beautiful nectar of this sort of vanilla-y taste that is absolutely something else. I'd say the best thing about Madeira cake is that it's basically 2 great cakes in one, crust and sponge. Both, I think, are absolutely delicious on a Madeira cake. It's a loaf cake, so you get it in slices. But much like the end of a loaf of bread, if you end up getting
The crust, the end.
the crust end, it's more of a treat.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absolute treat to get the crust of a Madeira cake. Uh, Equally, though, it's also great to get a normal slice. It's an excellent cake, a Madeira cake, and it's still one that I will like. These are my regular cakes, and if I'm sort of going down the cake aisle, my eye will often be drawn to a Madeira cake, and it's one of those things like, because now I know, I live in a house with someone who's not going to have any Madeira cake, and I look at that loaf of cake and I think, can I get through that in a couple of days? And I'm usually up for the challenge.
Yeah.
And
But it's down to you.
Is that, yeah, if I get that, I'm having the whole thing. Is that doable? I've got a little biscuit tin I can put it in. I guess it'll be all right, but I'll be dealing with it. And I've succumbed to the challenge, and you'll be pleased to know I've successfully achieved that challenge on many occasions. And it's still one that I will go, Madeira cake. The idea of like having a tea. But I mean, it's what's also quite nice about it is it's something about it that sort of, as I'm eating it, I feel a bit last of the summer wine. I feel a bit like,
do you think you get older
life.
while you're eating it, though? Do you think it makes you older? Like
Maybe.
It's like a vicious circle. The more you eat Madeira cake, the older you get, and the older you get, the more you want Madeira cake.
Exactly. If I eat a Madeira cake, I'm eating it with a tea in my hand, in a kind of, and I'm immediately feel like I'm in the world of Alan Bennett or Last Summer Wine or something. It's almost that sort of North Yorkshire kind of tea and cake. And also, what's quite nice about it is it's a very boring looking cake.
Yeah, it looks.
Do you know what I mean? It's one that
rubbish.
just looks utterly rubbish, and it looks like the kind of cake that would almost be like prescripted cake. Like,
what do you mean?
You asked for cake.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
like if you have doctor prescribed cake, that's what you get, and be like, it's a bit. Come on, look at it. But I would say, if you have walked past a Madeira cake and you're thinking that, you are in for a treat. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to you because you're not a tea drinker.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
I
There's a lot of cakes which I think a bit like that. Like, it's kind of tea and cake. Whereas I'm like, no, just a glass of water, thanks.
You know? Yeah. I don't know what the nectar is like with water. Never tried it. Always had a tea.
Always had a tea.
But I would say if you're a tea drinker out there and you haven't had Madeira cake and tea, and actually, if here's an experiment as well. If anyone's listening to this who's never done it, I would challenge you to buy a Madeira cake, have a cup of tea, have the tea and cake at the same time, maybe have a bit of a dip in the tea, and you come back to me, and anyone listening or watching this, report back, because I think I've changed your life.
If you're not dipping it in the tea, are you like putting some in your mouth and then chasing it with tea, or are you putting some tea in your mouth? Yeah. Well, that doesn't work. It falls out then.
Not so much in such a prescriptive way, but just in the way you might be like, I've had a bit of, it's a bit dry. I'll have a sip of tea. And when you're doing that, you're basically creating.
Okay.
That's what. Yeah. It's spun gold, absolutely spinning gold.
Alchemy. My number 2 is quite specific, but it can stand in for the wider genre. It's a chocolate cake with Smarties on top, right? And so that would be the cake I had for my birthdays when I was like between the ages of 0. You don't get one on your 0 birthday, but what I mean is
have this cake.
Until I was like maybe 6 or 7 when I started wanting like a Hitty Mountain cake or a Boulder Hill cake. Did have a Boulder Hill cake. It was amazing. But yeah, up until then it was chocolate cake with Smarties on top. And my kids often choose a chocolate cake with Smarties on top. And I'm like, that's my girl. I get real kind of like, sometimes they're like, no, I want a ladybird one. I want one with a unicorn riding on a mermaid or whatever, but when they choose it, oftentimes they'll be like, can we have chocolate cake with Smarties on top? And I'm like, yeah, that's the right choice. Even though Smarties are less colourful and less tasty than they used to be. And even though, you could just eat some Smarties and have some nice cake separately, but it just looks so amazing. Like if you're talking about covered in, you can sort the colors out and do a pattern. Beautiful. Like, I would take just a chocolate sponge, maybe with a layer through the middle with some icing, ice all over, and then Smarties all over. Just amazing. Like, I personally would go more towards a solid chocolate icing or a more, a lot of solid chocolate, whereas my other half, she will insist on a kind of buttercream sort of thing. But I like it a lot when it's gone hard chocolate. So when you're breaking the icing, you're like, it crumbles, and that's fantastic. But yeah, it's just absolutely joyful kids cake. And if someone offers me some now at a party or some kids party, I'll be like, yeah, I will, thanks. Yes, I definitely will. Whereas other parents
Oh,
are like, no, 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 no. I'll just have a cup of tea. Whereas I'm like, yes, I will have chocolate cake with Smarties on top. I will.
do you know what? It's never occurred to me, but I don't think I've ever turned down cake in a social situation
Any
or in any
situation.
situation. No, I don't think I've ever turned my nose up at it.
What about at weddings?
Yes, certainly.
What about at weddings?
Well, do you know what? I usually do a walk around to have put my eyes on the cake, and I decide whether so much wedding cake for me is terrible. I'd rather not have it. Rather not have it.
Yep.
So I usually do, and I think certainly the old-fashioned wedding cake is inedible for me. Even as a kid, would be like, absolutely not. That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's sort of almost like when you're dealing with some sort of plaster.
Yeah.
Essentially, and it's like, no, I mean, horrible stuff with perhaps like a sort of fruity, dry, spongy thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, not for me at all. Absolutely horrid. But now I think in the modern era, often when friends of mine get married, they realise that the world's moved on.
Yeah.
And we're in a better world now.
Yeah, you can have a good cake at your wedding.
We don't have to put up with this.
You don't have
absolutely
to
can.
You don't have something made by a construction firm.
No.
With Doric columns. It's not where it's at.
So often now, I will often try and have a bit of a squiz to see if anyone is the kind of type of cake it is. But in general, I'd say now people are way ahead.
Yeah.
And they're at least pulling down something which looks pretty good, even if it might not be my favourite.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, it looks pretty good.
At a wedding, if the food and drink is good, I probably haven't got room for cake anyway.
Oh no, I'll have a go. That's when I feel like I'm, celebrating a couple. Like,
this is my moment.
Of course, this is for you guys. Congratulations! I will eat this cake for you in memory of you. That's funerals, right?
Yeah,
that's
funeral cake. Love a funeral cake.
Funeral cakes. But yeah, no, I think now your cakes are much better at weddings, but in general, I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before I go on to my number one, something I was going to mention as well, but couldn't at the time you were talking about lemon cake.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you get lemon Madeira cake.
Yeah.
And I would say like that is fine. But I would say that is going to ruin your tea.
Yeah, But what about if you want to who has lemon in their tea? Huh?
Maybe, but I don't really. I don't really have faith in those people. But maybe that would be the thing maybe that would be the equivalent. Maybe that would be the Madeira cake you could have with a glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. I'm not going to check it out. Not till I'm older.
And my number one cake is M&S Bramley Apple Victoria Sponge Sandwich. Yes, please, all day long. It's a great cake. It's also a bit old-fashioned. Often around my birthday, no one's going to buy me a birthday cake, but I will buy myself an M&S. I don't mean this. You've pulled a face to make it look like it's sad. And maybe it is. But I'll often buy myself an M&S Bramley Apple Victoria Sponge Sandwich. And it's like a Victoria Sponge, like you say. And you're saying, not really into the jam. I can take or leave the jam. But the best variation on a Victoria Sponge is when M&S do it with the Bramley apples in it instead of jam.
So what it's vanilla sort of sponge.
Oh yeah, vanilla sponge, essentially like a Victoria Sponge.
Yeah.
not icing. What do I mean? Icing sugar on top
Yeah, just dusted.
of the sponge.
A light dusting.
Dusted. 2 sponges on top of each other, where you have cream in the middle, but instead of having jam and cream,
Yeah,
it's cream and Bramley apples, like a sort of apple sauce.
like stewed apple,
very sweet, very
like
sweet apple sauce. Oh, it's something else. That's the stuff. And the best thing about it is that you got to remember is it's a fridge item.
Yeah,
It's not.
It's
not a. Yeah. It is not a room temperature cake.
Mm-hmm.
When you get it, you want it out of the fridge. You want it to be a bit cold, and the cream is super sweet. I think, and it's also like when it has the cream, it's like, what is it about the cream? And I think it's that some of the Brammy apple is kind of going into the cream because the cream is like, this is delicious, and it's sort of served at below room temperature, straight out the fridge. I like it cold. Again, perhaps I could probably have it with a tea, but that I could probably have with some sort of cold drink and having a cold cake, not like an ice cream cake. Like a fridge level cold cake with cold bits of Bramley apple. Oh, it's absolutely delicious. Yes, please. I will. And it's one, when I see it, I'm always like, I can't get it again. I can't have another one of them. They're quite small. Well, I say they're quite small. Maybe that's big to a lot of other people. I would say
you're just doing that.
No, like this. I think
right.
like
the
more
small
like
cake. The small cake size.
I'd say it's the size of it's probably about 8 or 9 inches.
8 or 9 inches. Okay.
Probably that sort of size. Maybe 10. Maybe 10. No,
no, it's not 10. 10 inches is 10. Big, man. Think of records.
No, it's not 10. Yeah, exactly. That's what I've just done. I reckon it's about 8 inches.
Okay.
And cut into quarters. But I would say it's, even though on that one, a quarter portion feels like that's what you're supposed to have. You're meant to have a quarter of one of these. I defy anyone not to have at least half of it. I think once you've had it, or maybe this is me and it's my birthday and I've bought myself a cake. But it's one of those things where I've often, on bad times, I'll have 3 of the 4 quarters and you go, that's no good. But it's so nice that I'll just be like, I can't really do 1 quarter. I'll cut it into quarters, but it's so rare that I'll have 1 quarter and go, happy with that. It's like, I need at least 2.
What kind of time of day do you want to eat that most of all?
Oh, I'd say afternoon, evening. Great thing about it is there'll probably be some point later on in the evening where I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then I might go for slice 3.
You put it back in the cake, in the
4.
fridge.
Yeah.
And you're going to, there's that last quarter calling to me.
Exactly. I'm sure there's been times when I have eaten one as a full one by myself.
It's your birthday, man. Do it.
Thank you.
You've definitely got my approval.
Yeah. That's an absolutely delicious cake. I thinking about it now. And I like in M&S, it's one of those foods as well. It's one of those M&S foods that I have a paranoia when I'm in M&S that they're going to stop making it. So even though I'm not in the market for one, I'll often just go by the aisle and I find it reassuring to
check it's there.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, good. It makes you think all right with the world, because I've just got that worry with all M&S food like that it's going to be like, in something like M&S food where it's so consistent. Like other people probably do it, but I know it's not exactly the same.
That's the one you want.
Yeah, the ones that sort of built to recipe. And because M&S do that thing, and I can't think of any good examples. I'm sure there are some M&S examples specifically of things that I was like, I'll get one of those. Where is it? And then suddenly you find out, oh, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of outrageous. So I will probably every other time I'm in an M&S, I will probably just have a little look to make sure it's still there.
Just checking in, a bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi checking in on Luke Skywalker.
Exactly.
At his aunt and uncle's house, but not actually talking to him. Just checking.
No, I'm not. And I mean, it sounds like I am buying them every time, and I'm really not. I do just want to make sure that's still that's cool. because like when that happens, you know, that'd be a sad day for me.
We got the M&S food opening up shortly in Finsbury Park, opposite the tube station, opposite
Oh, yeah, you do
my
too.
entrance to the tube station, and I'm thinking like this might be one of the M&S products that people are mad about that I try, because I've got my things from M&S that I like, but when I'm going to have one like staring at me every time I come out of the tube, I'm going to need to start branching out and trying other people's M&S things, you know?
I do think this might be a personal thing as well. It's not something I feel like I don't hear anyone else talking about it.
You can't be on your own, otherwise they would have stopped making it.
It's true.
Even if you eat a whole one yourself once a year, that's not enough to keep them going.
Well, it does make me think, is it once a year or am I keeping it going?
Anybody's birthday.
Yeah.
It's someone's birthday every day.
It's true. I can celebrate my own way.
My number one, I didn't think it was a cake, but it was on the cakes page of Wikipedia, and its full name is a Pavlova cake. I'd just call it a Pavlova or a Pav, but the Pavlova cake. I'm going to call it cake so I can have it on my list. Created in honor of the dancer Anna Pavlova. During or after one of her tours to Australia and New Zealand in the 1920s, right? But Australia and New Zealand have been at war since the 1920s over who invented it, which of them. They both swear blind that they invented it. It's like Taiwan, China, it's like one, Northern Ireland. It's in Israel, Palestine. It's one of those intractable, battles.
And you can probably understand this, right? You can understand why they're all.
I'd want to claim credit for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think probably, I was introduced to it from, we used to live with a Kiwi woman, and she'd make them, for people's birthdays and stuff. And she'd often make them with kiwis on the top, kiwi fruit. Allow that. I'm not into that. Don't like kiwi fruit, especially not on something else. But Pavlova, meringue, crispy on the outside, marshmallow in the middle. There's a mushy bit in the middle, and then best of all, the kind of chewy bit in between the two consistencies of marshmallow. That's the most amazing three constituencies you can get out of one thing, right? Whipped cream on top, strawberries on top, could be a raspberry. Leave off the blueberries or, red currants or something. It's all too, no, it's not right. Amazing. Just, my mum always used to have them for her birthday. It's kind of stopped more recently. The kids haven't got into them yet. They don't really like cream and stuff. They just want chocolate cake. So I haven't had any for a long time. And when they're good, it's got to be homemade. Unbelievable. Summer party, Pavlova, glass of champagne. Well, Prosecco. Can't beat it. Unbelievable.
Do you know what? It is the kind of thing that would go well with the Prosecco.
Oh, lovely.
That would be nice.
If you'd be drinking beer throughout the day, and then the Pavlova came out, you'd be like, do you know what? I will have some Prosecco now, because if I can't drink my beer. So I'll do an ill-advised switch from beer to Prosecco.
Oh, beer with a sweet foods. No. Beer is crisps, peanuts, savoury snacks.
It's the greatest sadness of my life that beer and chocolate don't go together. I've tried with the chili chocolate. Chili chocolate you can just about eat with beer, like a dark chili chocolate, but that's it. It's not where it's at.
I've definitely had a Pavlova, and I'm not big on strawberries, raspberries, but I will have one to get the other stuff. If you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'll put up with it.
Yeah,
I don't mind. I'll be a martyr.
And they're going to be like a small amount on the top compared to the hopefully like volumes of whipped cream and absolute cliff of crusty meringue and all the good stuff.
You're absolutely right about the meringue, though. There is a sweet spot for the meringue. Although I think to achieve the sweet spot, you do need both of the other elements. And it is that kind of bit where it's sort of almost kind of sticking in your teeth, kind of.
One bit's cracking and crunching under your gatto fork, right? The next bit's all smooth and amazing, and then there's the chewy bit as well, which gets stuck in your teeth. You can't beat that with some cream.
You're a kid. Would you sometimes be like, oh, Mum, can we just get some meringues? And it'd just be like the meringue by itself would
Yeah,
then be like, you'd like,
it's
I'm imagining like walking home, biting into a meringue.
it's like eating
Oh,
like insulation foam or something. Because
yeah.
when you buy meringues on their own, they're really just crunchy. Do you know what I mean? They don't have
Mm.
they certainly don't have the gooey bit, and they very rarely have the chewy bit. Some very posh meringues, those ones that are like giant Hershey's Kiss shaped things that you get in some
Mm.
fancy delis and stuff. They might have a chewy bit in the middle, but they won't have the gooey bit as well. It's got to be in the Pavlova. Magic.
I just think it's weird now when I look back. There's just something I can remember, like just eating just a meringue.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we'd have like a pudding that would be like a sort of cheapo version of that, where it'd be like, oh, we'll have a meringue and like a scoop of vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
those
that
kind
kind
of
of
round meringue, the meringue
crunching up.
nests.
Yeah.
Meringue nests, and you smash them up once you had them in, but you could have some ice cream and some cream. They were in my jelly islands that we were talking about earlier, and my
Yeah.
grandparents.
Oh, I can't remember the last time I smashed up a meringue with a spoon and stirred it into some vanilla ice cream. That's taken me back.
Next time you come around my
Oh,
house, yeah, we'll get vanilla ice cream and meringues, smash them
yeah.
up.
I'm having a Proustian flashback as we speak. What a memory. Thank you. Um, um, so that's our number ones. I
Yeah.
think that's quite a good number. I think that's a good one. I'd also say a Pavlova is one that I would be. I mean, I guess it's cream, isn't it? So you're going to have to. But again, I'd be imagining that below room temperature.
Oh,
Very
yeah, it's got
much
to be in the
the
fridge.
kinda,
It won't.
yeah.
And what's quite nice to have with pavlova is you can put it back in the fridge, the leftovers, and it loses its crispiness on the outside, but it maintains the other two aspects of meringue, and so it's still good a second day. And if anything, the flavors kind of intermingle. So there's still a lot to be said for it on a second or even a third day. I
I
just
know
want to keep
exactly
eating
what
it.
you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that might be a nice thing to have at Christmas as well as a Christmas pudding.
Right. Well, they have it in Australia and New Zealand at Christmas. A lot of the time because it's hot at Christmas, and like it's got that. I mean, like we have. I didn't include it in this list, but we had once. We made what's it called? I forgot what it's called. The thing where it's like an ice cream cake, which is called baked Alaska, which is
Yes.
like meringue ice cream cake, and that's amazing. That's a real thing to behold. The
Yeah.
magic of science.
Yeah.
No, I'm all for it, but on my honourable mentions, I think I've got a better Christmas option.
Go for it.
So on my honourable mentions, I've got the Yule log, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yule log. I always like that as a name. I will. Yule log, but even better than a Yule log is a chocolate roulade, right? And a chocolate roulade is very much a chocolate pavlova folded up, or
Okay.
pretty much. It doesn't have. It's not going to be crispy, but it's like the kind of it's a slightly different bit of meringue consistency because you can roll it
Gotcha.
with the cream in and everything. And that's delicious. Chocolate roulade.
Yeah. I couldn't bring it to mind. I've just Googled it as we speak, and I've gone, oh, yeah.
My mother-in-law makes a fantastic chocolate roulade, and she's like makes it especially when I'm there. Like, Ozzy will like this, and it's like, yes, I will. And my other half and
But
sisters
you
are
stand
like,
on stuff like a Swiss roll or something.
Sauce fine. It's fine. It's not as good as my Cadbury Swiss Gâteau or a chocolate roulade or a Yule log. A Yule log being completely covered in some sort of chocolate icing as well. So a Yule log is very much an upgrade of a Swiss roll.
Yes. Yeah. What else have you got in your honourable mentions?
Well, I struggled with brownies because I don't really think brownies are cake, but they're not anything else.
No,
So
I think they
kind
would
of
be.
felt like
I think if I would definitely, they wouldn't be in my list necessarily, but they're, deserving of honourable mention, and certainly if they're in any list, they're in cake.
So my thing with brownies is brownies that I really like and would have them in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
But most brownies are not that. Most people put nuts in them. Get out. Rubbish. You're ruining the consistency, right? And most people make them this really dense, really stodgy, stick to your teeth, but not be sticky kind of just dense thing. I'm not into that. I like a much more, again, to have 3 consistencies. It should have a really crispy bit around the rim of the tin. It should be quite chewy, yeah, but not just dense. You know what I mean? And so I love if you want to make a Betty Crocker kit brownie, delicious. And Americans who make it in that kind of way, that really kind of chewy way, fantastic. But I find most of the brownies you get in British cafes and, you know what I mean, patisseries and stuff are just this kind of like sort of stodge, and I'm not into it.
I think you're right. I think the ones I've enjoyed most are probably those kit kind of, ones you just make from a packet or whatever.
Betty Crocker, and before that, Greens. Amazing. The Greens ones used to come with their own cardboard tray for baking them in as well. I can eat any amount of that. But yeah, I didn't put them on the list. A custard slice doesn't count. That goes in pastry, doesn't it? Because it has a pastry element.
Yeah.
Red velvet cake, that's nice. It was like a sort of fad cake a few years ago.
Yeah.
Every cake you had was red velvet cake for a few years. But it was like, that's a nice cake. I don't know beef with that.
Exactly what I would say with it, though. I go, yeah, it's a nice cake.
It's a nice cake, but
I don't think it's
eye rolling to be like, oh, another red velvet cake, great. Curly whirly cake, that's a good cake. Curly whirly cake, very good. Inspired by the legendary Entangled chocolate and caramel bar.
Mm-hmm.
A tiramisu was on the list, right? Now, I think you're stretching cake there, but if you can have Pavlova, I think you can have a tiramisu, and in the right circumstances, I do want a tiramisu.
What are those circumstances?
End of a meal in a restaurant, relatively few options in the dessert menu.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably an instance where other people would have a coffee, and I'll be like, I have a tiramisu.
Well, that's coffee flavoured, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, I want an element of coffee, but not an actual coffee. So
if I had one, I would be like, an espresso, please.
And I like a coffee cake. It feels
like you would have that.
I like a coffee cake as well. Like, my other half makes a nice coffee and walnut cake, very good. She was slightly offended it wasn't in my top 5. I was like, do you really think you make one of the top 5 cakes in the world? But looking at my list now, which has angel cake and Cadbury Swiss Gatto on it, I think she's going to go back to being offended if she listens.
She probably won't. That's probably fair, to be honest with you.
If she's listening in now, haha, you caught me. That's it.
A cake I don't have often enough, but only in the it's one you see. It's in a supermarket and newsagent cake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, oh yeah, but there's usually a better option, so I rarely go for it. But I often think about it. Jamaican ginger cake.
Yeah.
But it's one that often doesn't make it because it's just there's something a couple along from it, which is more appealing for me.
I like the ginger cakes. It always used to be around at things like if you went to like some sort of function in a community center or something,
exactly.
Or like, if there was some cake, and if there was 2 types of cake, one of them would probably be like a Jamaican ginger cake.
Yeah, and if I was ever in a situation where it's like, I like that, where you go, you need to buy some cakes. One of them would be Jamaican ginger cake.
Yeah.
And it is good. It is a good cake.
Because I kind of only need one cake at a time. But when we're in Germany and see my partner's German cousins and their family, they'll have like Kaffee and Kuchen, coffee and cake for those with less language skills than even me. And they'll bring like all the family will come, all the cousins and stuff. They'll bring like 2 cakes each, right? And there'll be like 10 different families coming. There'll be like 20, 30 cakes on a table. Big cakes. And it's like a bit rude to leave any. So it's a bit like, here, have a plate. They have a massive plate for you to fill like with like 7 bits of cake. Have 8 bits of cake. And some of them are like 90% cream. And some of them are like completely dry. Most of them are ring shaped. So there's a real variety of cakes. Not all of them nice. But the intention is very nice and really, but they go mad for cakes. Like fill a table with cakes. Amazing. It's a different world.
Sounds great. But yeah, I imagine with that much cake, you probably aren't gonna. They're not all gonna be spectacular.
No, but there's lots of different. You're watching somebody else go straight for like the one that you think looks the worst, and you're like, oh, okay, different
Different
cakes,
folks for different strokes.
different cakes for different volks.
Folks, we could workshop
Yeah.
that into something.
Yeah.
Cakes again, sort of childhood cakes that I feel like I've grown out of, but would sort of go again. Are the kind of cornflake or Rice Krispie cake, just chocolate covering.
I had one last week at my eldest daughter's class bake sale. They have they take it in turns each Friday for one class to do the bake sale. The money raised from it goes back to the class to buy them I don't know, essentials like toilet paper or something, the state of school funding, but like that kind of thing. And yeah, we baked some chocolate cookies, very good. I'd say I wasn't really involved, but I took them in and helped set up the store a bit and that kind of thing. And there was it was like everything priced at 50p, and I was like, yeah, I will have some cornflake cakes, chocolate cornflake cakes. Nice.
Yeah. Also, 50p is pretty good, right?
There was 50p and a pound options. So there was like one table was all the 50p stuff, one table was all the pound stuff. But none of
imagine if you went to any cafe now, you wouldn't get anything for 50p.
Oh no, not at all. But it's not a cafe. This is school thing.
Sure.
I mean, it's very much not a cafe. And you've got to remember, some of them will be made by children, and you may get diarrhea. So
yes, true.
Like there's a
health and safety element to it.
There's a Russian roulette element to buying stuff made by kids.
Sure,
I think.
Sure. Although I think if I'd seen a Rice Krispie or cornflake cake, I would probably be tempted to.
Do you know the other thing I bought? Because it was on the 50p table. Someone had just dropped it. Some people bake stuff, but some people just buy something and bring that along to contribute. And someone had bought a packet of fondant fancies. And I was like, when's the last time I had a fondant fancy? Remember them?
Yeah.
Like the little cubes of sponge cake completely wrapped in a slightly dodgy icing with a little fondant layer on the top. Anyway, I had one of them and I was like, yeah, they taste exactly how they used to. Quite like it. But I'd probably go another 20 years without having one.
Okay. I don't have fond memories of fondant fancies particularly.
Fond memories.
Oh yeah, that's probably why I've done it.
Yeah.
Probably why I did it. But yeah. I think they're all my honourable mentions done as well.
I have hid a cake-related record sort of in the background, but I didn't have much to go on there for my set dressing. But I have had the song "Baby Cakes" in my head.
Oh yeah, by Three of a Kind.
Three of a Kind, Baby Cakes, and it was worth saying that like, if you want to think about kind of Essex culture, modern Essex culture and things and stuff, Baby Cakes, Three of a Kind. I assume they're from Essex. I mean, I don't know, right? But they like that video is a total snapshot. It was still relevant. Still relevant. Must be 20 years later. Yeah, so I think about that a lot. It's really bad, but it's very catchy and it's very Essex. And it's another one of those bands where obviously the tune probably came through the clubs and stuff, and so they don't look like a manufactured pop trio.
Oh no, they certainly don't.
The bloke who he looks a bit like a combination of all the blokes from S Club 7 into one guy. There's a bloke who looks like that. There's a blonde woman and there's one more guy. I think there's a black guy. I mean, I think about them more than I ought.
Me too. I think of them regularly. I also was convinced, which I think was a sad thing that never happened, because in the early 80s, there was the TV sketch show Three of a Kind, which featured Lenny Henry, Tracy Ullman, and David Copperfield. Not that one, not the magician.
And not the Dickens character.
Not the Dickens character. A third David Copperfield. And I remember thinking, when Three of a Kind came out and you saw the lineup of Three of a Kind doing Baby Cakes, I was going, surely the next comic relief song has to be Three of a Kind and Three of a Kind.
Yes. I think it was.
And I cannot believe they didn't do it.
I think it wasn't a big enough hit.
Surely. What's Comic Relief for, if not for that?
If it had happened, if Baby Cakes by Three of a Kind had come out in 1984, that would 100% happened, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
And when you think of them side by side as well, I just would be like, this would be perfect.
God, it would be perfect.
Absolutely perfect. What a shame. What a shame. Imagine how much money you would have made from me alone, Comic Relief.
Yeah. Baby Cakes.
Anyway,
Any
just
other
a
songs?
sad thing that never happened.
Any other songs about cakes? I wasn't coming up with much.
There's that. Well, it's a band. It's a man, isn't it? Cake, who had a kind of one-hit wonder, but then are actually quite well respected, apparently.
I don't remember Cake.
Yeah, there's the actor Jonathan Cake, who played Mosley in the Channel 4 Mosley drama on Channel 4 about 10, 15 years ago, who was around for a while, Jonathan Cake.
Yeah.
But he always just amused me. But it's like, and there's Mosley, Jonathan Cake. I just thought he had a funny name
so
to play a character.
We could have had him on the list.
We could have. Oh, no. He was eligible.
But
he didn't make my top 5.
No.
Maybe if he'd done some more stuff. But maybe, he didn't quite make the list.
Maybe if he went better with tea, he'd make your list.
Never had tea with Jonathan Cake. Perhaps if he, perhaps one day we'll see, and then we'll see if he makes the grade. Definitely eligible though. Yeah, other songs with cakes in. Probably not. Oh, there's what's it called? Someone left. What's the song? Richard Harris, where it's someone left. Well, he sings a song about cake, and it's basically someone left their cake out in the rain. And it's basically like a metaphor. This idea that he's had this perfect love, but the cake has been left out in the rain, and now when he sees it, he realizes it's never going to be like it was again.
Right.
Hang on.
No, it's fine. That's fine. That's enough. That's enough. I don't need more than that on Richard Harris's song.
It's good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's been covered lots of times since. MacArthur Park, song MacArthur Park.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I didn't know that was about cake.
Yeah, it's about cake.
I've never listened to the lyrics. I think the version of MacArthur Park I like is instrumental, so you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's also got some. It's actually like the version Richard Harris sings. I mean, Richard Harris's album is almost pretty impressive for the music that's on it, which is it's actually quite exceptional as well, I think. But yeah,
if I knew you were coming,
Park.
If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake.
Yes, that's a good
one. We had to inadvertently sign up for one of these online surveying websites and pay some money for it to use a feature, and so I've got spare surveys to do. So I might well send around some list off surveys on the social media.
Sounds all right.
I haven't got really the ideas for it yet, but I can't. They've got these surveys burning a hole in my pocket, and you can do quite cool things with them. So you can put logic into it and make it. It's quite good. I'm going to fiddle around with that, but it won't be of much, significance. But I'm going to try that.
I'm interested to see people's lists of cakes. So what you think of as your favourite cake, please list them. Because I mean, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I imagine cakes is one of those things. I imagine if your taste is different from mine, I'll just be going, oh no, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want your top 2 cakes. I don't think I might try your number 1, but your number 2, Madeira Cake, no.
I wouldn't recommend it for you.
I'm not gonna go softly into the dying of the light. I'm gonna rage against the Madeira Cake or whatever that phrase.
I would say for people who feel they're a bit too young and hip for a Madeira Cake, I think it is. I feel like it might be for you.
If you're a tea drinker.
Not you.
Not me.
Not you, Ossie. But I feel like if you're a tea drinker and you think I'm not Madeira Cake guy. I'm still with it. Well, think on. If you're a tea drinker you will be doing yourself a disservice not to try some Madeira cake. I'd say.
I think we got it. Yeah, do let us know your favorite cakes. Most people do it on Twitter, but do it on Facebook, do it on Instagram. Nobody ever talks on Instagram, but like it's all happening on Twitter. All the opinions flying around on Twitter.
Does seem to be, doesn't it?
Yeah,
does seem to be.
And there's a lot of good stuff on there. I think we're going to hear some Victoria sponge. I think we're going to hear some marble cake. I think we're going to hear about some Jaffa cakes. You're mad if you put a Jaffa cake up against these other cakes because it's cake singular. You're not going to take one Jaffa cake over a,
And also, I don't want to have a thing when people talk about is it a biscuit or is it a cake? They're called Jaffa cakes. They're little cakes. They're not biscuits. Just in a biscuit packet, I don't. Also, they'd be nowhere near my favourite cake. Hate them. I think they're rubbish.
I haven't eaten one in a long time, but they've no. Not a top 5. No.
Not anything. Not anything for me. Ugh. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for liking and subscribing and telling all your friends and giving us reviews. Oh, I haven't checked the reviews. Maybe we've got new reviews on iTunes.
Who knows? Cool. Thanks to Graham Murphy for suggesting it in the first place.
Yeah, let's have a cake.
As I say, if you've got any suggestions, let us know and we will endeavour to eventually get round to them. If indeed we can think of a legitimate top 5, which is the hardest part of it.
Happy birthday to my dad, who I will be having cake with on the day this episode comes out.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. And big apologies to everyone for getting baby cakes stuck in your head. But, go watch the video again. I'm going to go watch it now. It's great.
Just don't know. No.
Just don't know.
Goodbye.
Bye.